Every empire in history believed it would last forever, yet all eventually fell. What if these collapses weren't random, but followed predictable patterns that are repeating today? In the autumn of 146 BCE, Roman general Scipio Aemilianus watched Carthage burn. As tears fell, he quoted Homer, "One day, sacred Troy too shall perish." He understood that even mighty Rome would someday meet the same fate. History reveals an astonishing pattern. Empires follow predictable life cycles regardless of technology or ideology. Babylon, Persia, Rome, the Ottomans, the British Empire, and the Soviet Union all traveled remarkably similar paths, typically lasting around 250 years before collapse. This isn't coincidence. Historian Arnold Toynbee, after studying 23 major civilizations, recognized these cycles follow specific patterns. Like biological organisms, empires are born, mature, age, and die. Modern researchers have taken this further. Peter Turchin's Cryodynamics has developed mathematical models identifying 50-year cycles of political stability, alternating with periods of instability across civilizations. These patterns emerge regardless of technology or ideology, appearing in ancient slave societies and modern superpowers alike. The Soviet Union provides a striking recent example. Just 4 decades after launching the first human into space and building the world's largest nuclear arsenal, this superpower collapsed with barely a fight. An empire spanning 11 time zones, boasting the world's most powerful army, fell not from external invasion, but from internal contradictions. Most empires don't collapse due to outside enemies, but from internal rigidity, the inability to adapt to changing realities. As historian Joseph Tainter noted, empires don't die because they're murdered, they commit suicide. In 146 BCE, as Roman general Scipio Aemilianus watched Carthage burn, he wept rather than celebrated. When asked why, he quoted Homer, "One day sacred Troy shall perish." He understood that even mighty Rome would eventually fall. 6 centuries later, his prediction came true. History reveals a startling pattern. From Babylon to the Soviet Union, empires follow predictable life cycles. The most surprising discovery? They rarely die from external conquest. Rome didn't fall primarily to barbarian invasions. It collapsed from within. Economic decline, agricultural failure, and political corruption had already hollowed out the empire long before its enemies breached the gates. Historian Joseph Tainter identified the central paradox in his study of collapsed civilizations, what he called the law of diminishing returns on complexity. Initially, empires solved problems by creating new systems, bureaucracies, regulations, taxes. But eventually, maintaining this complexity costs more than the benefits it provides. The empire becomes too rigid to adapt. The Ottoman Empire illustrates this perfectly. By the 17th century, their once innovative administration had become paralyzed by layers of officials and regulations, unable to respond to European industrialization. Similarly, the Soviet Union's command economy, designed for a simpler industrial age, couldn't adapt to the information revolution. While Western economies embraced computers and networks, Soviet planners remained trapped in rigid 5-year plans focused on heavy industry. The technological gap became insurmountable. The lesson is clear. Empires don't die because they're conquered. They die because they cannot change. While history shows most empires collapse, a select few defied this pattern, adapting and surviving against seemingly impossible odds. The Byzantine Empire stands as perhaps history's greatest example of imperial resilience. When Western Rome fell in the 5th century, its eastern half didn't merely survive it, thrived for nearly a millennium longer. Emperor Heraclius orchestrated one of history's most successful governmental transformations, changing the official language from Latin to Greek, restructuring the military into the more efficient Thema system, and creating a streamlined administration. These bold reforms bought Byzantium another 800 years of life. China offers an even more remarkable pattern of resilience. Unlike empires that vanished permanently, China has experienced multiple cycles of unification, fragmentation, and rebirth while maintaining cultural continuity across millennia. When the Han Dynasty collapsed, unlike Rome, China reassembled itself. Its regenerative capacity stems from concepts like the mandate of heaven allowing power transfers between dynasties and its merit-based examination system that selected officials based on ability rather than heredity. What separates empires that adapt from those that collapse? The survivors share key traits: flexible governance structures that can evolve with changing times, systems that prioritize competence over connections, and cultural frameworks that balance tradition with innovation. They demonstrate what historian Arnold Toynbee called the capacity for self-determination, the ability to respond creatively to challenges rather than rigidly clinging to outdated models. Perhaps the most important lesson from these adaptive empires is that survival doesn't mean preserving everything, but rather identifying and maintaining what's truly essential while boldly reimagining the rest. As we examine America's position in the cycle of empires, we see concerning parallels with past fallen powers. Like Rome before its decline, America faces unsustainable debt growth, deepening political divides that paralyze decision-making, and aging infrastructure struggling to support its ambitions. Military overextension mirrors patterns seen in previous empires, with defense spending exceeding the next 10 nations' combined burden that historically signals imperial overreach. These warning signs echo what historian Arnold Toynbee observed across 23 civilizations, empires becoming victims of their own complexity. Yet America possesses unique advantages that neither Rome nor the Soviet Union enjoyed. Unlike historical empires dependent on territorial conquest or ideological control, America built a system of global institutions reflecting its values. Its innovation ecosystem remains unparalleled, continuously reinventing industries. The ability to attract global talent through relatively open immigration enriches its adaptive capacity. And crucially, America's diverse economic base doesn't collapse with the failure of any single sector. Recent nearshoring policies represent a fascinating inflection point. Are we witnessing the beginning of imperial retreat, as Rome experienced when abandoning distant provinces? Or is this more akin to Byzantine Emperor Heraclius's strategic reform-scudding, unsustainable commitments to preserve core strength? History suggests the most successful empires weren't those that resisted all change, but those that evolved with new realities. The question isn't whether America will maintain its current position forever. No empire has, but whether it can transform into a new form of power, still relevant in a changing world order. While the rise and fall of empires seems inevitable, today's global powers can learn vital lessons from history. Unlike the territorial Roman Empire or the ideological Soviet Union, America's influence operates through networks of financial systems, cultural exports, and global institutions. This fundamentally different power structure may help avoid traditional imperial decline. Beyond the United States, all modern powers face a critical choice: adapt or perish. History consistently shows that societies clinging desperately to the status quo ultimately collapse. The Byzantine Empire survived for a millennium after Rome fell because it continuously reinvented itself, adopting new languages, military structures, and governance models as conditions changed. China's remarkable resilience across thousands of years stems from its capacity for renewal after periods of fragmentation, rather than rigid preservation. Success comes through evolution, shedding unsustainable commitments while preserving core strengths and values. Perhaps most importantly, imperial trajectories aren't dictated by mysterious cosmic forces. History reveals that thoughtful reforms by forward-thinking leaders can extend a civilization's flourishing for centuries. Citizens themselves shape this future through political engagement, entrepreneurship, and cultural innovation. The question isn't whether any power remains dominant forever known has. Instead, can today's nations navigate changing realities without catastrophic collapse? Can they evolve from empires to something new? Those who understand history's patterns can break them, creating societies that don't merely rise and fall, but transform and endure through time's inevitable changes. If you've discovered insights from history's fallen empires, share your thoughts below. Subscribe to RockVein for more hidden patterns that shape our world, and join a community building wisdom that outlasts empires. If you've discovered insights from history's fallen empires, share your thoughts below. Subscribe to RockVein for more hidden patterns that shape our world, and join a community building wisdom that outlasts empires.